And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. Now, I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday, January 20th. I've got a big show planned for you today. We have yet another candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. Nobody really knows that much about him, but apparently he's running. Now, remember, it was not that long ago, like last week, where we had a candidate for governor who announced he was running for governor, and then all of a sudden, he's not running for governor because he doesn't qualify. Now, we don't know too much about the fellow that's entered the U.S. House race, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Why not? I mean, I'm a talking head, and so why not talk about things that are on the radio? So to help me do that, my pal Rebecca Bextel is going to join the program at the top of the hour, and we're going to run through the U.S. House race, and we'll probably talk about a lot of different stuff, elections-wise, the governor's race, who's running where, who's not running, whatever. But one of the big stories, and I haven't got a chance to talk to you about this on the live program, so I thought, why not just talk about it? The Open Range Record released our Android app yesterday. It was a big day for me, super busy. But our Android app is available for beta testing, is what they call it. The first stage, when you release an app, it has to go through testing, and the reason you do that is you find little bugs that you didn't realize that were there, or that maybe you didn't even think to look at. And so, but you can download the Android app. It's pretty much fully functional. And you go to the Google Play Store and you can download it. It's awesome. And while we're not the first news outlet in Wyoming to have a mobile app, we are the first independent news organization to have a mobile app, and I'm super proud of it. I've been working on this thing since we've been working on this thing since June or July. And so it's been a long time coming, and I'm super excited about it. So go to the Google Play Store if you have an Android phone, and just search for the Open Range Record, and you'll find it. Super impressed and excited. The website has been going gangbusters. Thank the good Lord above, that there's been that many people checking it out and looking at it. And I think the reason why it's been so popular, at this point, it's only like 2.5 weeks old. But the reason it's so popular is I think that Wyoming citizens are tired of the mainstream news. Because it's not really news. It's opinion that is wrapped up to look like news. So here's our revolutionary idea. And it's still, I'm shocked that this is even revolutionary. But to put news on the news page and opinion on the opinion page and label it what it is. And that way, at least you know what we think is news. Like I've got a piece that I'm going to publish today from one of our staff writers that it's all factual. It's written in a fun, easy to read way. But I'm going to label it as news. And if it's not, you go ahead and tell me. You'll see it later on today on the website. Anyway, so enough about that. We'll probably talk a lot about it when Rebecca joins the program at the top of the next hour. But there's a couple of stories that I need to cover. If you're in Sheridan today, there is the Eggs and Issues. This is a ridiculous kind of Chamber of Communists event that's put on every year. And it's, you get all the legislators together, and then the public gets to ask them questions. And, it's considering the people that put it on tells you a great deal about the questions that are asked. But anyway, that's going on at the Ramada Inn this morning. And in fact, I don't know, it might be starting right now. But anyway, I'll have a report for you on that one tomorrow. Also, if you missed the podcast from yesterday, you really need to go listen to it. It's called You're Paying for Ecofeminism. If you don't know what that term means, don't worry. I needed to look it up too, and it is absolutely incredible. Well, what the podcast is about is there was an appropriations committee meeting where they had the University of Wyoming come back in, and Agent 29, and I'm not just saying this because he's the producer of this show when he's in town, when he decides to show up to work, but he has been a rock star. And so he asked the president of the University of Wyoming about the sustainability degree. And Ken lists off all of the ridiculous courses that would be required and then the electives that you could take. And it's all of this like global climate governance and social justice and diversity in natural resources. I mean, it's insane. But you can hear the questions that were asked from the legislators, and they're questions that you and I would ask. And then you can hear the response from the University of Wyoming. And essentially what it was, well, we don't offer that program anymore. And that's it, right? They can't be held accountable because they're not doing that anymore. So in other words, if you rob a bank and you've decided that you're going to stop robbing banks, yeah, well, according to the University of Wyoming, you shouldn't be held accountable for the banks that you've already robbed. And the banks that they're robbing is your pocketbook, your piggy bank to do all of this. And so anyway, it's a great episode. Lots and lots and lots of sound bites from the Appropriations Committee. But we begin this morning with a fond, not so fond farewell to Wyoming PBS. An article in the Cowboy. So far, Wyoming says no to replacing PBS money dropped by the feds. Now, if you remember, in the big, beautiful bill, all funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was cut. And in fact, that corporation doesn't exist anymore. It's been completely dissolved, and there is no national PBS, rightfully so, because it, as Ken rightfully characterized it, it is Pravda. And Wyoming PBS absolutely is that. So let's go to the Cowboy. And I quote, a state legislative committee has denied $6.6 million a $6.6 million Wyoming public television requested, the grammar. I mean, do these people not have an editor? Anyway, requested to fill a massive federal funding deficit. The decision, which isn't final, includes $3 million for operations and $3.6 million for a grant the feds rescinded. After the federal government said it's not going to give Wyoming Public Television, also known as PBS, $6.6 million to continue its normal operations and upgrade the tower network it's required to keep, the state also has declined to make up the difference. Now, let me just tell you about this tower. Wyoming PBS admitted in committee that their tower is from the Cold War era. So, I'm just saying that's probably like the 60s, 70s, I don't know, 80s. But they've received millions and millions and millions of dollars, not only from federal taxes, but from your tax dollars too. And they didn't even upgrade their equipment. Now, when you're in the broadcasting business, as your illustrious host is, I like to try to stay on the cutting edge of technology. Of course, I don't have $6.6 million coming from the federal government, so I have to do with what I can. But you got to stay on top of the different technology. I mean, and it's just, you just have to keep up with it. That is the cost of doing business. And so one of those things, you see this little gem right here, That's the video switcher thing. Here's what it does. You see, it switches between there. Now, before, I would run the show and I would just have one camera and it would just be you and me talking to this camera. Well, you gotta expand. You gotta do things different. That is not what Wyoming PBS did. In fact, they left their tower the same as it had been since the Cold War era. Those are using their words. And let me tell you why they didn't upgrade it. Because they didn't have to. Because they always counted on that money coming from your pocketbook. Because they thought this money is always going to be there, and so we won't have to upgrade it until absolutely necessary, till it ceases to function. Well, now, since they don't have the money coming from the federal government or your federal tax dollars, and they don't have the money coming from state, well, now they don't have any way to upgrade their tower. And I don't even know who really uses a broadcast tower anymore. I mean, maybe for Wyoming Public Radio for the 5 people that listen to it. But you can do everything you need to do on the internet. And let me tell you, it's far less expensive. And if you like tomorrow, we're going to be down in the studio downtown. Ken is finally back and we can sit in our fantastic studio. We can do just about anything that a regular nightly news broadcast can. Just about. We don't have the live weather app, but there again, I don't think we need it. And all of it is equipment that we put together. We'd buy a piece of equipment for a different show, then we'd buy another one, or we'd buy a new microphone because we needed it for a specific purpose or something. But all of the equipment in the downtown studio, that is all of ours. It's just stuff that we put together and put it to good use on the internet. That's not what Wyoming PBS has done. No. They've been relying on your tax dollars, and so they haven't upgraded what they needed to. They didn't make good use of their money. Now, here's what the Cowboy says. The denials advanced last week in the Legislative Joint Appropriations Committee's budget planning meetings in Cheyenne are not final. All 93 members of the Wyoming legislature are scheduled to debate them after the lawmaking session opens February 9th at the state capitol. Without the money, the outlet is facing cuts to its staff, programming, or both. Wyoming Public Television CEO Joanna Kale told the Cowboy on Monday. Those denials also cut into money the outlet spends to stream legislative committee meetings that happen at off-Capitol sites, she said. Kale said, however, it's not as bad as it could have been. Wyoming Public Media is facing a tentative defunding in the state budget. For example, given what other agencies are going through right now, we were thankful, at least at our level, funding was intact, Kale said in a Monday phone interview. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I think the team at Wyoming PBS realizes that's the case. I'm ready for it. Now, question, my friends, if Wyoming PBS is as good as everybody claims, and if their programming is so groundbreaking and so essential, why is it that they can't compete in the free marketplace? Why is it that they have to have your money to operate? If everything is so awesome that they put out, why is it that they can't attract more advertisers? Like like K2 Radio and this program and every other private media outlet. I'm excluding newspapers from that because they get an extraordinary amount of your money through public notices, something that I hope somebody in the legislature tackles this year. But anyway, why can't they compete? It's because they suck. And because it's absolute Pravda propaganda coming from the left wing. That's exactly what it is. And let me tell you how that worked, because it was all the liberal legislators for decades in the state legislature that demanded that the Wyoming Pravda, we've got too many of them, Pravda on the Platte, Wyoming Pravda, whatever, that this version of the Wyoming Pravda just parroted their talking points. Rarely did you see a center-right opinion. And when you watched the debates that happened during election season, all of the questions were tilted towards the left-wingers, towards the redcoats. It's if you were a conservative and you were in that debate, you had to fight tooth and nail to get your opinion out there. And so, why wouldn't the liberals in Wyoming fund Wyoming PBS? Well, of course they would, because they got your tax dollars at their disposal. And why not have a pet media outlet? All right. So as Congress, back to the piece again, as Congress tilted last year And prior toward defunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was Wyoming PBS's federal money conduit, the local outlet kept from cutting positions by not replacing retirees or other employees who quit. If the denial of money for Wyoming PBS survives, there's a high likelihood, yes, that Wyoming PBS would have to look at reductions in many places. Now, here's the other part of it. They say that, we spend our own money on broadcasting the legislative committees. Well, actually, it's not your money. It's ours. And let's just talk about the legislative session. That thing pretty much runs itself. You don't have to have a boatload of employees at the Capitol running this whole thing. And even so, there's no reason why Wyoming PBS has to be the people that covers this. There's absolutely no reason why the Legislative Service Office couldn't just stream these. You put up a couple cameras, go hit the little button that says go online, and you're good to go. You see, it's agencies like Wyoming PBS that make up a litany of excuses why they need your tax dollars. And there is we always have the common refrain of, yeah, but why does it cost that much? Well, because it's federal tax, it's your tax dollars. And so why wouldn't it cost that much? If you have an unlimited piggy bank, you can spend as much as you want. Now, I know, and let's just see if it's in here, because I talked to Agent 29 yesterday, and he said that they interviewed him over this. Let's see here. Well, then, the feds. House Appropriations Chair John Baer told the Cowboy on Monday that it's been a pattern for the state's appropriators to reject taking on the federal government's prior burdens. One exception to that, he noted, was the Appropriations Committee agreeing to take on the greater cost of administering SNAP. So that's food stamps. As for the towers, the same concept prevails. Quote, this was a federal mandate for the emergency broadcast system, so the feds need to pick that up, he said. I think the system is outdated. Most people, they're not turning on the TV to get emergency data. They're looking at their phones. And, I think it was, it was Ken who said, when an emergency happens, most people get it on, their mobile device. And then for the 5 people that are watching Wyoming PBS, they find out after everybody else knows that there's an emergency going on. The truth is, we have the technology. We have the technology. We can make it better, stronger. I used to love that show. It was the $6 Million Man. Anyway, we've got the technology to where we don't have to use towers. You have things like Facebook and the interwebs, where any sort of emergency data can be broadcast. And if you have a phone, which most people do, you know how easy it is to get people's attention with an Amber Alert. You notice how fast those hit your phone? You ever been in a room with a whole bunch of people and an Amber Alert hits, every phone in the place goes off all at once? You can't ignore that stuff because your phone doesn't shut up until you turn it off. So we don't need Wyoming PBS. We don't need them for emergency broadcast. We don't need their Cold War era tower, and we certainly don't need their Pravda broadcasting. Let's see here. I'm looking for now. Ken, like I said, Ken told me that they interviewed him for this, but I don't see his quotation in there. Probably not, because he called them the Pravda. Anyway, so no money to Wyoming PBS, rightfully so. They suck anyway. To the Hill. Trump says there's no reason right now to use the Insurrection Act in Minneapolis. And I quote, President Trump said Friday that there is no reason for him to invoke the Insurrection Act, one day after he threatened to use the law in the wake of demonstrations in Minneapolis. Quote, I don't think there's any reason right now to use it, but if I needed it, I'd use it, Trump told reporters at the White House before leaving for Palm Beach. Trump threatened to use the 1807 law on Thursday following a shooting involving a federal officer. Now, here is what the local broadcast that was republished on The Hill had to say about Trump's use of the Insurrection Act. So let me just play this for you real quick. Let's see here. Here you go. From The Hill.
Minneapolis after a week of clashes between demonstrators and federal enforcement officers. And now a new warning from President Donald Trump.
The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal. As you know, it has been used sparingly, but it has been used.
The law would allow the president to deploy active duty U.S. troops or federalize the National Guard to interfere with protests. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the president has the power to act.
He certainly has the constitutional authority to utilize that.
The threat comes a day after an immigration officer shot and wounded a man in Minneapolis. Noem calls it self-defense.
3 individuals weaponized shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself.
Democrats in Congress accuse the administration of escalating tensions.
His operations rely on brutal tactics, avoiding de-escalation and due process against U.S. citizens.
You look away from what this president is doing is another day that our neighbors face unimaginable cruelty at the hands of their own government.
The White House says no final decision has been made on deploying troops, but DHS says the option is actively being reviewed as protests continue and security concerns grow. As for ICE leaving Minneapolis anytime soon, the White House says that is not happening. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Okay, so there you have the, let's see, here we go. So, I mean, that kind of gives you the long and the short of, all of this stuff in Minneapolis. The truth is there is an insurrection going on there now. And in my opinion, there's no reason why President Trump wouldn't invoke the Insurrection Act. I mean, that's exactly what it's for. You have to restore order. And when you have a state that isn't going to do it, and that's obvious. Tampon Tim Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis have pretty much refused to get their affairs in order. And I mean, it is an insurrection. This is exactly what the president needs to do. And I think that he is just he's just waiting to see if Minneapolis will get things under control. But I don't think they're going to. It was not that long ago that we had widespread riots over the media ginned up George Floyd death. Now, to be very, very clear, he wasn't killed by a police officer. He died because he was a drug addict strung out on drugs, and he died from a fentanyl overdose. Now, all he had to do was give up, but he didn't. And so the media ginned that whole thing up, and you had, and that was part of the whole like summer of rage or whatever they called it. But the folks in Minneapolis or the folks in Minnesota, they didn't really make any attempt to stop the riots then. So what makes you think that they'll do it now? I mean, I see absolutely no reason to assume that. Continuing on from the Hill piece, quote, and Trump threatened to use that 1807 law, and here's what he said. If the corrupt politicians of Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE, who are only there doing their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that is taking place in that once great state. The post came hours after a federal law enforcement officer shot and injured a man Wednesday evening in Minneapolis, sparking the latest wave of protests in the city. Now, this whole thing is easy, my friends. If you attack a police officer, it's not going to end well for you. If you try to run one over, if the officer is threatened, they're going to pull their gun and probably shoot you. We are obligated by law to follow the commands of police officers. You don't get to just not follow their commands because you don't like them or you don't want to follow them. I mean, that's the law. You have to. I mean, that's where the term suicide by police comes into play. That if the officer tells you, hey, don't raise that weapon, and you do, you're going to get shot. Or if they tell you, hey, stop driving your car, don't run over the police officer that's standing in front of your car, and you try to do that, you're going to get shot. So I think that this is entirely an insurrection, and I see no reason why we shouldn't invoke the Insurrection Act. All right, well, it's a little bit early, but let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, I don't know who could have predicted this, but there have been thousands of businesses that have left New York City and New York State. And it started happening before Mamdani was elected. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm your illustrious host, David Iverson, ready and geared up for another week on the program. I've got a huge stack of stuff to talk to you about. I got the coffee pot going. Rebecca's going to meet me here in about 30 minutes, and the open range record is rocking and rolling. And if you haven't already, you can download the mobile app. Just go to the Apple or the Google Play Store and download it. And for all of you people that are sniveling about how me choosing to do the Android app first and you don't have your iOS app, just be patient. Just be patient. I read somewhere that patience is a virtue. I'll get it out to you soon enough, and I'm currently working on it. And here's why I chose to do the Android app first is I don't really use Apple products. I never have. I never really liked them. I know. People in this industry, publishing, graphics, yeah, okay, maybe Apple is a better product, but not me. Not for me. I'm a PC guy, and not politically correct, of course. That is personal computer, IBM, Microsoft, those sorts of things. And I've always been an Android guy. I just like the phones, and I know more about them. So it made perfect sense for me to start with that one. It would not make perfect sense for me to start to try to program an app that I know nothing about. So I had to learn somewhere. That's where we chose. So for all of you Apple people, patience is a virtue. I mean, dig into it. I mean, it'll be okay. All right. New York City has lost a tremendous amount of businesses. Now, I don't know who saw this coming. Like every conservative, when you start talking communism and socialism, and you say that that businesses have to pay their fair share and that you're going to tax the rich, well, it doesn't really engender that much confidence from business people, and it causes them to move elsewhere. From justthenews.com, New York City lost nearly 5,000 businesses early last year as employers closed their door or left for other low-tax states. So this is, before Mamdani's election. The analysis comes as newly elected Mayor Zoran Mamdani pushes to hike business taxes to foot the bill for his crazy agenda. Let's see here. Hold on just a second. Here we go. I got to get some sound bites for us. Anyway, the report released Thursday by the Economic Development Corporation showed more than 3,500 new businesses opened their doors in New York City during the second quarter of the fiscal year. But that was offset by a loss of 8,400 employers. That's the weakest quarter for business formation since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The corporation's report is the latest to highlight New York City's shrinking business sector, with employers looking to other low-tax states as Albany piles on new regulations and costs, i.e. taxes. And, that's why you're seeing a lot of people, businesses, moving to the Cowboy state because we do have a low tax environment. We have pretty much a low regulation environment, though I would argue that we've got too many regulations. But business owners aren't stupid. They will continue to run their business until they can't. And then when taxes become too burdensome, they get the heck out of Dodge and go to places where they can make the same amount of money. And when you know what's coming, when you have somebody that's saying stuff like this.
But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of ceasing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other. That we do not.
Okay, all right, that's enough of that. So riddle me this, riddle me that. Who and what exactly is the means of production? I'll give you a hint. Those are called businesses. And so when the mayor of your city says, we're going to seize the means of production, i.e. all of your businesses, it's probably a good time to get the heck out of Dodge. Now, the corporation's report is the latest to highlight the New York City's shrinking business sector, with employers looking to other low-tax states. It also comes as Mamdani seeks to draw up support for higher taxes to pay for plans for universal child care, tuition-free college, and his stupid free bus service in the city. By the way, that bus service brings in $700 million a year to the city of New York. And so because it fits with his agenda, he's going to take almost $750 million right off the top. That has fueled concerns about an exodus of major employers from the nation's largest city, with low-tax states like New Hampshire and Florida urging New York City businesses to relocate. A September report by the Public Policy Institute of New York State found that 72% of 500 employers surveyed don't think the state's economic conditions are good, and only 21% believe that the state is on the right track. I don't see how, those 21% can think that it is. I honestly do not think that there's any way that they could come up with that. Many business leaders surveyed for the Institute's report said New York's taxes and regulations make it too expensive and difficult to run a business. The Empire State has more than 300,000 regulations on the books, and employers surveyed wanted fewer state and local regulations and lower business taxes from the state, according to the report. In 2023, New York's effective state business tax rate was 5.9%, making it the 9th highest in the nation. The report's authors noted. The state also ranks poorly for individual income, sales, property, and unemployment insurance taxes. It has the 4th highest percentage of housing-burdened households in the country, with 38.6% of households spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So all of these factors are contributing to the exodus of people from the state of New York, and it's only going to accelerate. If Albany, that is the capital of New York, goes along with Mamdani's plans, the only thing you're going to see is more businesses move out of the state and move to places like Wyoming. Now, it's okay, so this one is a big boondoggle too. Because we have agencies in the state like the Wyoming Business Council, not for long, by the way, who have advocated that you have to entice these businesses to move here. Why? Why do we have to entice businesses to move to a low-tax, low-regulation environment? Why wouldn't they do that on their own? Now, I have a suggestion. Perhaps the state should stay the heck out of the free market and just let everything operate as it should. Let businesses come if they want to come. If not, they can move elsewhere. But the truth is, businesses are in the business to make money. And the best way to do that is to reduce your overhead, i.e. taxes, and move to a place where you can actually make money, i.e. Wyoming and other western states. It just blows my mind. When you get to Cheyenne, the lack of awareness of a lot of our public officials that, they get elected to an office, either the House or the Senate, and automatically a lot of them just lose their brains. And they think that because they're in office, Their job is to write more laws. That's why their constituents sent them there to write. No, maybe your job is to represent your constituents' best interests, and that would be lower taxes. It's incredible. Now, if you've never been to Cheyenne during the legislative sessions, you really need to go. The first time I took the lovely Christine there, we'd first got together, and of course, I spend the legislative session in Cheyenne, covering all the comings and goings of our of the Redcoats and the Patriots. But anyway, Christine came down to visit, and the very first, it didn't take an hour sitting in the gallery for her to just blow her stack. We're talking about taxes, and at the time, of course, we hadn't opened up the salon yet, but my wife has worked for herself for a really long time, and she was just doing the math in her head, and what was being proposed on the floor would have put a greater burden on her. And several times I had to say, honey, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. You're right to be mad, but just calm down. And it's incredible. If you've never been to Cheyenne during the legislative session, you absolutely need to go. And if I remember, and when Rebecca's on the show, we may have a way for you to do that. But anyway, so this is not rocket science. Keep taxes low, keep regulations low, and business will come. It literally is build it and they will come. So back to Minneapolis for a minute. Now, in my experience as a historian, as a learned member of the media, I can tell you that the people that invade churches are never the good guys. It is not the good guys that storm into a church and do whatever they want. But that is now happening in Minneapolis. From Fox 9 Minneapolis, protest disrupts church services in St. Paul. Activists with the Racial Justice Network disrupted church services at City's Church in St. Paul to oppose a pastor at the church. Protesters went to the church because they say the pastor in question, David Easterwood, is also an acting field office director for ICE in Minnesota. The protest was documented in part by former CNN anchor turned YouTuber Don Lemon. Video from Black Lives Matter Minnesota also showed protesters chanting during services. Quote, "This cannot be a house of God while harboring someone directing ICE agents to wreak havoc on our community," attorney Nikema Levi Armstrong told Lemon during his live stream, explaining why the group was at the church. "I'm a reverend on top of being a lawyer and an activist, so I come here in the power of all..." Wow. Absolutely incredible. Well, I've got a couple videos of the protests in that church. Let me just play the first one for you here. Here we go. Protesters interrupt church. Watch this.
The U.S. Department of Justice is investigating an anti-ICE protester group who disrupted a church service in the Twin Cities over the weekend.
This happened at City's Church in St. Paul, where activists allege a pastor there works for ICE. Our So Young Kim joining us now to take a look at this situation. So Young, the DOJ's probe focuses on whether protesters violated what's called the Federal FACE Act.
That's right. The FACE Act provides protections for people exercising their religious freedom to worship at church without intimidation or interference. Dozens of protesters chanting after entering City's Church in St. Paul during Sunday service. Activists say the group was there to call out a pastor who was the acting director of the ICE St. Paul field office. At one point in the video, you can see one of the other pastors who was at the church at the time addressing the crowd. Just hours after the incident, the U.S. Department of Justice announced it's investigating potential violations of the Federal FACE Act. So what is the FACE Act? It stands for the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act of 1994. As the name suggests, it provides federal protections for reproductive health services, but also protects religious freedom as a First Amendment right. It prohibits the...
Okay, hold on just a second right there. There's a little bit more of that video, and we'll finish it up in just a second. But if it seems incongruous to you that the FACE Act includes a provision to protect places of worship, that's a perfect example of when items get added to a bill to get it to pass. That in order to get enough votes, you have to add something that other people want. And that whole religious, protection of religious services, that's one of those items. So you have an act, the FACE Act, that really is meant to protect your access to, and this is, I can't believe I'm saying this, access to an abortion clinic, which that's why it was passed, is to protect abortion clinics, baby killing factories. But there was also that religious service provision in there. So just another example of, where we put things to get stuff passed. Let's go ahead and continue with the video.
The act or attempts to intimidate, interfere, or injure any person exercising their religious freedom at a place of worship. In response to this incident, a spokesperson for Governor Tim Walz sent Fox News this statement that reads, quote, "The governor has repeatedly and unequivocally urged protesters to do so peacefully. While people have a right to speak out, he in no way supports interrupting a place of worship."
And Attorney General Pam Bondi says she's been in contact with a pastor at the church. We've also reached out to the church directly for comment on the matter and have not heard back yet. Live in studio tonight, So Young Kim, Fox 9.
All right, thank you, So Young.
Wow, right? So you have protesters in Minneapolis that stormed a church. Oh my God, my friends. And you have people in the media, namely CNN and former CNN people like Don Lemon. And I've got a video of him too that I'll play you in just a second. But that are crashing a church service just to get their point across. And as I told you at the beginning of this segment, my friends, that it is never the good guys that storm churches. Never. There's lots of examples in history where it is always the people who want to absolutely seize power. And if you're going to do that, if you are a Marxist revolutionary, which, by the way, make no mistake, that is exactly what's going on in Minneapolis. We've seen this in a lot of different cities, and you may have heard the term the Red-Green Alliance. Okay, so what that refers to is the Marxists and the Islamists working together to create havoc and, ultimately to overthrow the current system. That is how Mamdani got elected. He is both an Islamist and a Marxist, which, by the way, those two ideologies, they're remarkably similar. They have, generally speaking, the same goal, which is to take over an entire society, except one is theological, one is absolutely political. So they work together. And so what's happening in Minneapolis is trying to create more chaos, because what happens when and this is a theory that was put forth by the Frances Fox Piven. And, she and a colleague wrote this book, and I forget the title of the book right now. But essentially, the book was, How Do You Overthrow the System? And they suggested bottom up, top down, and inside out. And if you're a fan of Glenn Beck, as I am, he talks about this a lot. But the idea is that you create chaos. And then when there is enough chaos, the top will have to come down. The people in power will have to come down and will have to quell the protests. And it's at that point where you can turn everything inside out. Now, they related in the book, Frances Fox Piven related it all to healthcare, welfare, essentially. And what she said is get as many people as you can on welfare, and it will collapse the system, that you can't support the amount of people that are on there. And then the federal government is going to have to fix it. So they'll come down, and it's at that point where you can turn everything inside out. And you can say, well, they're in this case, it's, ICE or Trump who would have to put a stop to it. And then it just fuels the protest, because you have to put down the insurrection, which, again, it's absolutely an insurrection. So make no mistake, what you're seeing in Minnesota is that. It is absolutely Marxist-driven. And anytime you see protests like this, there are people behind the scenes that is their ultimate goal. In the Fox 9 Minneapolis piece that I just read to you, they flat out say that Black Lives Matter is involved in this. So it is hardly ever what it appears to be, and it is never what they say it is, and it is always the same sort of ideology that's driving whatever protest or movement or insurrection that you have. It's always the same thing. The way that communists and revolutionaries and Marxists get their point across is through creating chaos. And I don't think that there's any argument that you can make that that says that what's happening in Minneapolis is anything other than an insurrection. So now let's go to Don Lemon. Now, normally, and okay, so the video that I found, let me just play it for you, and then we'll talk about it because I have an interesting perspective on this one. So here's Don Lemon, former radical CNN host, videoing this protest. Now just watch.
I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
Okay, so that's the first video of that whole thing that I watched. And if it were just that, I would say that that's actually pretty good journalism, that you're documenting what's going on. But that is not the extent of what Don Lemon did. Now, he went and talked to some of the people that were in the protest, and his broadcast, which I do not have a video clip of this, but I do have a piece that was written about it. So his piece ended up being advocating on the side of the insurrection. So this is a piece from, let's see here, where is this from? I'm not exactly sure, but it's Don Lemon joins anti-ICE protesters storming the Minnesota church service in a chaotic scene. Left-wing mobs stormed the Minnesota church to protest immigration and customs enforcement, stopping services and leaving worshipers furious. One demonstrator said that they were, quote, demanding justice for Renee Good. Well, she got the justice that she deserved, by the way. The 37-year-old Minneapolis mother fatally shot. Okay, well, she was a member of a radical group, and she disobeyed the orders of police, and she tried to run over a police officer. So, yeah, absolutely got what she deserved. Let's see here. Lemon, who operates as an independent journalist after being fired by CNN, spoke to one of the pastors at City's church who said the protesters refused to have a peaceful dialogue. Quote, "No one is willing to talk. I have to take care of my church and my family," he said before asking Lemon to leave. Lemon said he had gone to Minneapolis after weeks of protest because, quote, "I believe in the Constitution and I believe especially in the First Amendment and that all journalists should be here if they have the opportunity." The former CNN anchor noted afterwards that there were police vehicles outside the church, but he never saw officers walk in and try to calm things down. Pam Bondi wrote on Sunday that she had spoken with the pastor and reassured him that any attacks are being met with the full force of federal law. If state leaders refuse to act responsibly to prevent lawlessness, this Department of Justice will remain mobilized to prosecute federal crimes and ensure that the rule of law prevails. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon said the protesters will be investigated by the DOJ's Civil Rights Division under the FACE Act, which you saw that in the video, which criminalizes using force or threats at churches. All right. So anyway, I mean, that gives you the long and the short of it. But this piece was from the Daily Mail. I see it. Forgot to copy it into the title. But the point here, I think, is that Don Lemon, though he tries to portray himself as a journalist, and I think that he's right that, any journalist, if you had the opportunity, should go cover that, find out what's really going on. I mean, that's the whole job of a journalist. But Don Lemon is a radical. He's a leftist radical. And after the program today, I'm going to go find the original broadcast or the original video that he uploaded to YouTube to see exactly what he did, because from the article I read, he's absolutely in league with the protesters. So it's it's not journalism. It's, again, opinion. It's advocacy. And I mean, that's exactly what it is. Let's see here. Trump to Politico. And this one, I got enough time to do this. We've got about 10 minutes before Rebecca joins the program, so we can do this one. Trump to Politico. It's time to look for new leadership in Iran. Okay, now there's no question, and I have an interesting perspective on this one. There's no question that the Ayatollah Khomeini has been a destructive force for the people of Iran. He turned a once prosperous country into an ideological or a theological tyranny. He absolutely destroyed an economy, destroyed the lives of numerous people. Already there have been thousands of protesters that have been killed. And I did read a piece, though I did not print it off, that suggested that chemical weapons have been used on protesters. So there's no question that the Ayatollah needs to go. That like there is no in no world can what he's done to the nation of Iran be justified. But here's what Trump says, and then I'll tell you my position on this whole thing. President Donald Trump on Saturday called for an end to Ayatollah Khamenei's 37-year reign. Quote, "It's time to look for new leadership in Iran," Trump told Politico, as widespread protests calling for an end of the regime appear to have waned. Thousands of protesters across the country were killed over the last 3 weeks, prompting Trump to repeatedly threaten military intervention. On Tuesday, Trump called on Iranians to keep protesting and to take over institutions, saying help is on the way. The next day, the president abruptly changed course, saying that he had been informed that the killings had stopped. The best decision he ever made was not hanging more than 800 people 2 days ago, Trump said on Saturday, when asked about the size of the possible military operation in Iran. Trump's comments came shortly after Khamenei's X account posted a series of hostile messages aimed at Trump, accusing the U.S. president of being responsible for deadly violence and unrest in Iran. Quote, "We find the U.S. president guilty due to the casualties, damage, and slander he inflicted upon the Iranian nation." In another post, he said Trump had mischaracterized violent groups as representing the Iranian people, calling it, quote, "an appalling slander." Trump, after being read the post, said Tehran's rulers rely on repression and violence to govern. Quote, "What he is guilty of as the leader of a country is the complete destruction of the country and the use of violence at levels never seen before," Trump said. In order to keep the country functioning, even though that function is at a very low level, the leadership should focus on running his country properly, like I do in the United States, and not killing people by the thousands in order to keep control. Leadership is about respect, not fear and death, Trump said. Now, all right, so I have a real problem. Well, real problem, that's probably the wrong way to characterize it. I don't like the idea of the United States being the policeman of the world. I never have. I think that nations ought to be able to govern themselves. However, I do think as a force for good in the world, that the United States should protect the innocent. And in my mind, there's no question about that. But I really become hesitant when we start dabbling in regime change. Rarely has that ever worked for us. It certainly didn't work in Iraq, and it definitely didn't work in Afghanistan, though I think that Afghanistan is kind of an outlier. That country's been screwed up for thousands of years. But our efforts at finding new leaders, installing them, they've never really been successful because you have to win the hearts and minds of the people. And often what you find is that the folks you think are in favor of, a republic or a constitutional type of government or democracy or whatever, some sort of democratic republic, you often find out that the people who were your allies were not really your allies. Look at Syria. So in Syria, when Bashar al-Assad fell, there was this group that was fighting against him, and I remember lots of news reports. Oh, these people are on our side. They're a force for good. They're changing the country. From one dictator to another. The people running the nation of Syria right now, which, I don't know. Maybe in some cases they've been favorable to the U.S., but they're members of ISIS, or ISIS, an ISIS-aligned group. I don't think that anybody would say that ISIS is a good group to run a country, nor do I think that we could claim that ISIS would protect the rights of citizens. They wouldn't. You're trading one tyrant for a tyrannical oligarchy. And I'm not saying that would happen in Iran. Each country is very different, but I really hesitate to fall on the side of advocating for regime change. I've never really been a fan of that. And it's, again, I think that, each country ought to determine its own course. However, in the case of protesters, I think that Trump was right to say that if the Iranian regime starts killing protesters, okay, then maybe we can make an argument to intervene. I don't really have a problem with us arresting Nicolas Maduro. He's had an arrest warrant out for him for over a decade. U.S. courts have, he's got an active indictment against him. I have no problem with that, which I guess maybe you could say I'm being a little hypocritical, but to me, that one seems a little bit, I don't know, a little bit better. Maybe it's a police action. But there again, it's still kind of a regime change, and the United States is involved in that. In fact, Trump said, we're gonna run the country, but nobody ever told us exactly what that means. And so I'm really hesitant to side on the side of any of this regime change stuff. Certainly, the Ayatollah needs to go, but it needs to be the people of Iran that do that. And I being a historian, I can tell you that pretty much every time we've and by the way, it was us that installed the Shah of Iran, who got overthrown later. Now, the Shah of Iran did a great job. I mean, he did an excellent job running the country. It turned into be a pretty liberal society. And I think that he did fantastic, but he didn't last very long. And in fact, the Ayatollah came in and took power. I mean, that's been the way that it's worked since then. Or worked is kind of a unfortunate word to use there, but that's been how the country has been governed since the fall of the Shah of Iran. So anyway, I have a real problem with this whole idea of regime change. I don't know, man. I'm just really hesitant to go along with it. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by my pal, my business partner, my friend, Rebecca Beckstill. So we'll do that in just a second. Back after this. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics. I'm David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record that the mainstream media, they just refuse to even attempt to do that. I mean, like I keep telling you, What you see in the mainstream media is not news. It is opinion wrapped up to appear as news. They got the news wrapping paper out. I mean, it's like the cheap wrapping that you use for a birthday present. You know, you don't have any wrapping paper around, so you grab the newspaper and you wrap up the package, and so it appears that it's news, but it's not. And you know, there's a great story here in the oh, here it is, right here. And while we're waiting on Rebecca, I'll run through this one. Casper Star Tribune, the Pravda on the Platte, receives nods at the Wyoming Press Association. Okay, first, the Casper Star Tribune really doesn't do journalism anymore. They used to be the state's paper of record. I mean, they were the number one news source in Wyoming until they were bought out by Lee Enterprises, which, by the way, is not a Wyoming company. The paper is not printed in Wyoming anymore. So really, it is very, very rare that I open up the Pravda on the Platte and look at their headlines, and there's anything really to talk about in there. Yet, the Wyoming Press Association had their awards, and they gave some to the Pravda on the Platte. Here you go. And I quote from the Pravda. Star Tribune staff took home 6 nods at the 127th Annual Wyoming Press Association Awards on Saturday, including one first-place selection. It marked the second year photojournalist Andrew Town and education reporter Allison Alsop entered the contest, and the first year criminal justice reporter Dylan Farrell entered. Alsop and Farrell each won their first WPA awards with 2 nominations. Town won it. Okay, all right. I can't take it anymore. It tells you how illegitimate the Wyoming Press Association actually is. And in fact, I was not that long ago, I was talking to a guy who's pretty high up in the Press Association, and he told me, you know, David, they don't really consider you news. They don't consider you legitimate. I was like, well, that's funny because I don't consider them legitimate. I mean, if you're not going to report both sides and you're absolutely going to publish stuff that's 100% left-wing biased, there's no way that you're at all fair, and it doesn't mean that you're a journalist. So joining me on the program is my good friend, Rebecca Bextel. Rebecca, welcome to the program. Uh-oh, I think you're muted. Rebecca, you're muted.
Good morning.
There we go. Now we got you. How you doing this morning?
Doing good. I wanted to thank you and Christine for my lovely scarf and silver piece.
Man, that does look good on you, doesn't it?
Thank you.
So what do you make of this whole, I don't know if you heard me, but the piece I was covering before you joined the program was the Casper Star Tribune receives nods at the Wyoming Press Association. Did you know that they were still in the news business?
You mean that rather than the opinion?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's honestly
all right. So on our agenda for today, apparently we've got another person that's going to run for Congress, Matt McGinnis. You know anything about him?
I do not. I did look at his website, 5th generation. He might be one of those people that think there's going to be so many people in the race that they'll just take a chance.
Well, I don't know that that's a bad strategy because, you know, if you get 4 or 5 people in the race, the person who wins, man, they're going to have a pretty low percentage of the vote. So I don't know, maybe it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. Might as well give it a shot.
Well, here's what the outlet Sweetwater Now says. A 5th generation Wyoming Republican from Pinedale is announcing his intent to seek election to the House of Representatives. Matt McGinnis describes himself as pro-life, Second Amendment supporting conservative who is the true Wyomingite running for the seat. He also said he fully supports President Donald Trump's vision for the nation. He said his pride and appreciation for Wyoming's hardworking families. Okay, on and on and on. I mean, basically, it's just boilerplate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Just give me your thoughts on how the race is shaping up right now. We got a lot of people running. What do you think?
Well, I'm a big Chuck Gray fan. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be straight up about it. I think a lot of my friends are going to write him a nice check. I think he deserves to go to Congress. I know people are panicking that he's not going to be the Secretary of State and we could end up with some nightmare situation like Slither's Nethercott or something like that. But I like Chuck a lot. I'm curious what Bo Biteman is going to do. I was asked to go to lunch a short time ago, and I get to this guy's house, and there's a guy from Club for Growth there. And so he starts asking me about Bo Biteman's voting record. And I was honestly surprised at myself because I didn't realize what kind of lunch I was walking into. I thought I was just going to this guy's house. And I started talking about just his voting record. We talked about things like how Senator Steinmetz's immigration bill never had a chance because he was just bullying her on the Senate floor. And at one point, the guy said, well, at least you've got a runoff bill. I said, no, we don't. Thanks to Senate President Bo Biteman. We actually didn't pull that one off. And, I think a lot of people still, maybe not a lot of people, but people still think of Bo Biteman as a conservative. But from what I witnessed in the Senate, I mean, he's very far from it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if he runs against Chuck and Julian
Balo.
Did you see Chuck's post on Facebook that said he hopes we don't miss the fact that 4 years to the day of her announcement to run for Congress, she resigned from her elected post?
Oh, yeah.
How funny is that?
No, that was a big deal if I remember it. And, so she was superintendent of public instruction,
right.
And she was in her second term, and like right before her term expired, she quits, moves to Virginia, which it's interesting that she chose Virginia, same place her friend Liz Cheney went to, takes a job working for Glenn Youngkin, quits that job, goes to work for a consulting outfit, and now she's back to run for Congress. And if you, and just give me just a second here, this is a weird Constitution thing. So there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have to live in the state that you represent, or even for the U.S. Congress, or that you even have to live in that district. There's nothing in there. You could live in an entirely different state and run for the House of Representatives or the Senate for any state that you want. Probably not a good idea, I wouldn't think. But that's what the U.S. Constitution says. And so, even if Jillian Balo didn't live here, which I think that they live in Laramie, not exactly sure, she doesn't exactly have to live here.
Does she live here like Liz Cheney lived here?
I don't know. That's what I want to know.
I know people that Liz Cheney told that her kids were in school in Wyoming. And then they later found out they were, of course, at their place in Virginia. So people can tell us anything, Senator Mike Kangaroo supposedly lives in Jackson instead of the house he just bought in Palm Springs.
See, and there's a lot of that going on. Dan Zwanitzer, he bought a house in House District 10, moved there. I mean, this program had him dead to rights. I had real estate website pictures of his empty house in House 43. I had pictures of his car parked outside of his house in House District 10. We had him. I had all the deeds and everything. So what does he do? He gerrymanders his new house back into his old district. That was if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else will. But that was a great episode called "Why the Little Box, Dan."
He's a fighter for himself. Forget about the rest of us. Forget the people in his district. He's a fighter for himself.
Now, you mentioned something that, you mentioned the governor's race, kind of. So we got a lot of people running for that one. What's your take on that?
Well, okay. I think that Governor Gordon was thinking he was just going to sneak this thing out in the Senate. And then when Harriet decided to run for Senate, now he's sitting there trying to figure out what he's going to do. I know I always say this on your show, but whoever that genius was that said, if you like Governor Gordon, you're going to love Barlow. That's hilarious.
Oh, boy.
I hope that Eric Barlow is not our new governor. I think that Brett Bean would do a wonderful job. I think Susan Bean would be a wonderful first lady for the state of Wyoming. She's very classy and always doing the things I don't do. Like if you go somewhere, she's volunteering at the front desk, signing people's, helping with name tags and stuff. She throws herself in it. She throws herself into it, and she'd be a wonderful governor's wife and support system. But I just don't know that there's a path to victory for Mr. Ben. And I think Megan Degenfelder I think she's won me over a little bit. I'm just going to say that. She, I did not, like I've said before, I did not vote for her for school superintendent, but she has, and I certainly have a problem with the wind energy thing. I was down there in Douglas. I had just walked out right before Governor Gordon tried to fight Chuck. I would have had Chuck's back if I had still been there. But I don't know. I think Megan could pull this thing off. I know the plan is going to be to pack a bunch of people into the governor's race and just, take a chance. But
well, that's been the history. I mean, when Matt Mead got elected, I think he won with like 27 or 29% of the vote. Gordon won with 33% of the vote. I mean, that's kind of been the history. And, when you get a bunch of people in the race, it's the vote gets split. Now, I want to go back to what you said about Brent. I like him, and I like his wife, Susan. There's no question that he's a conservative. I've had lots and lots and lots of conversations with Brent, but I share your sentiment on that I don't know if there's a way, but there again, you get enough people in the race, it's anybody's game. But I do think that we've got 10 months till the election. This is politics. A lot can happen in 10 months. You never know what sort of skeleton is going to creep out of the closet. And so, I mean, I think that race is pretty interesting too. I haven't heard a lot about the other top 5 elected positions in the state. I think those are all kind of up in the air. I think perhaps Slithers will probably run for Secretary of State. That would be my guess.
Please no. Jesus, Lord, help us.
Oh,
Lord, give us strength. Please, Jesus, don't do it to us. Don't make us.
I just hope that somebody offers her a consulting gig that is like the offer she can't turn down.
Right.
And that she just, go on your merry way. Go have a good life. Leave us alone.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen, though.
Yes.
All right. So that's probably enough politics for right now. Let's talk about our new little venture, the Open Range Record. I am so stoked about that. We released our Android app yesterday. Sorry about your luck. You have an iPhone, so you'll just have to wait. But let me just show everybody the website. Well, let me get it queued up here first. So I show
While
everybody.
you're queuing that up, can I just say one thing? I would love to see a strong candidate for treasurer, because as nice as Treasurer Meyer is, I think we can do better. His slip votes are absolutely a nightmare.
Yes, they are.
And so I would encourage some conservative strong candidate come out against him. Not that he's not just a nice guy and all of that, but his voting record is horrendous.
Well, honestly, Rebecca, most of the people on the slip board, their voting record is horrendous. I mean, you heard the interview I did with Megan Degenfelder, and, she talked about the pronghorn vote. I think she owned that one in the interview. And so, I think that she insinuated she should do things differently. But I circled back and I said, but it's not just that vote. There's a whole bunch of them that are not conservative.
I agree, but I also like to give. It gets on my nerves when a politician makes a mistake, like they clearly made a bad vote, but then they defend it come hell or high water. Okay.
Oh yeah. I
think
hate
we
that.
should just let people say, "Look, I made a mistake." I remember when way back in the day, when Ruth Ann Petroff was our representative here in Teton County, she was getting beat up about stuff, and I remember I wrote this letter to the editor in her defense because I didn't know any better. I saw a Republican. I didn't understand some of the stances she had made, and I just felt like as a Republican, I needed to defend her. I can't stand by that article now. I made a mistake, and I just was misinformed. And so, to me, I think now I can't imagine how Kurt Meyer could talk himself out of ever getting my support for treasurer. He would have to basically say he blanked out or had a senior moment for the past 4 years, and it's now a pretty steady medication where we can be guaranteed that it's not going to happen again. But I think Megan has done a good job of helping me understand where she came from a little bit. And, we always say the lovely Christy Racinez, what a lovely person. I'd love to have her family over for a barbecue. I've been talking to her about some of her votes, and I have the feeling that might be a little bit different moving forward.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's hold that thought on Auditor Racinas for just a second. I want to show everybody what's on the website. While I do that, take a look at your phone.
Okay.
All right. So here is the Open Range Record website. And we've shown you this a couple different times. You can see right up there at the top, there's the banner that says Cowboy State Politics Live is live right now. And then a couple of the articles. There's the big one about our Android release. I'm so stoked about that. And then you can see there's a lot of different stuff we posted recently. There's the op-ed from John Baer that came out yesterday, and then a great piece from Dawn Marquardt. It's an opinion piece. It's a little bit different than the stuff you usually get from her. And then there's another investigative report. And Rebecca, you've got a couple of things on here too. There's this one about your town hall in Casper that's just going absolutely bonkers. Why don't you give us the 10-second version on that one?
Well, I'm in the middle of continuing to bust the low-income housing scam that's going on all around Wyoming. I even had a group reach out to me from Utah. They want me to come take this on the road because they've identified 5 buildings that have the same thing going on outside of Salt Lake City. David, we are going to be breaking a pretty good story here in the next couple of days as
I can't wait.
As the plot thickens on the scam known as low-income housing here in Wyoming.
Well, this one actually, you know what? Yes, it is about the low-income housing, but this one is a little bit different. And I have to tell you, my friends, I cannot wait. And if I had a newspaper, I wouldn't own a newspaper because it's a giant money suck right now. I'd love to have a printing press, though. Put that on our list, maybe at some point. But if I had a newspaper, this story would have 3-inch headlines on the front page above the fold. I mean, it's a good one, and I can't wait to break that one. It's going to be fantastic. But we got to wait a couple of days on that one.
Yes.
There's also another piece. I haven't published it yet, and I don't think I've told you about this yet, Rebecca. Another good piece from one of our staff writers, Dana Jennings. She sent it to me last night. It's really good. So there's a lot of stuff happening on our website. And I think your article, it's got something like close to 2,000 page views on it. I mean, it's really going bonkers.
Apparently everyone hates a scam.
Weird.
Apparently people hate that we're trying to redesign Wyoming by pulling people in from other states. Apparently a lot of people have a problem with that.
So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and, I don't mind tooting our own horn. In fact, I think it's a good thing. Nobody else is going to do it for us. But our website has a tremendous amount of page views already. And it's only, what is this, week 3? Like the beginning of week 3? What do you attribute that to? I mean, I really thought that it was going to be kind of a steep hill to climb. I mean, we got to compete with, the Cowboy and the Pravda on the Platte and all those. Right. What do you attribute like the almost immediate success of our website to?
I think people in Wyoming want to get the truth. I think they do care about what's happening. I know some of these things are a little bit complicated or hard to, get to the root of the problem. But I think people in Wyoming are very motivated to save our state, to figure out what's really happening. Look at how hard some people like Dawn Marquardt work, or Tina Johnson, Laura Pavey, all these lovely ladies all around the state. Not that there's not a bunch of gentlemen activists out there, but we constantly hear from places like Cowboy State Daily or the Casper Star Tribune. They want to attack people like John Baer. Mm-hmm. But then when I'm going around Wyoming, I was in Lingle and Torrington this weekend, and people love John Baer. Like, where is the opposition to John Baer? Because I'm in Teton County, and I think people really appreciate what he's doing. So I think people are just kind of tired of the bias, and they just want to get the facts.
Well, and when I started the show, and you probably didn't get to see that part of it, but I spent some time saying, what you think is the news is not the news. It is opinion that is wrapped up as news. It's I equated it to the Christmas package that you wrap with newspaper. because you're too cheap to go buy actual birthday paper. And so you wrap it up in the last version of the newspaper. That's what you get. It doesn't have anything to do with the news. And so I really think, and maybe this is a revolutionary idea. I think it's pretty simple. But just to tell people, hey, we think this is news. We think this other thing over here is opinion, and label it as such. And I don't know why that's such a hard concept for the media to grasp. And here's the other thing too. If we publish a piece and you think it's opinion, tell us. Let me know. I will absolutely go in there and put an editor's note and say, okay, we heard that we got told this one's opinion, so we changed the label on it. That's not a hard thing to do.
And we'll talk more about this when we post our breaking news issue. But we need to all remember there is opposition coming. They're not going to let somebody like Brent Bean or Megan Degenfelter walk away from this congressional race. A governor race, gubernatorial race, very easily. Remember in my election when I caught wind that I was playing footsie with some guy under the table, and I couldn't have been more shocked. I was getting calls at this guy. There's no way. My husband said he felt sorry for me that he was telling people I had played footsie with them, because there's just no way I would ever go for a guy like this guy. I couldn't even recall sitting at a table by this guy to try to play footsie with him. And then, of course, how did I not know that it was a leg of the table or whatever? Right. Why didn't he move his foot? Okay, that was my other question. But, people will make up stuff or do whatever they can to try to take people down. And we just have to just stay strong. We just have to use common sense and keep a level head. And I think that's one of the reasons that Open Range Record is a success. People they're tired of the BS.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different factors. One, it's new. Okay, everybody likes the shiny new object. Right. Two, I think that it's a different perspective. And by the way, I just thought of this, just reminded myself, so I'll get to that in just a second. But if we're going to publish, if it's a credible news piece, we'll publish it. I don't care if you're on the left or if you're on the right, or maybe you've got a different right. view of things. Hey man, if you can write complete sentences and use spell check, and I got no problem publishing it. These other folks, I looked at every morning. I look at the cow pie, and not to just pick on them, but they're a convenient target. It is very rare that there's what they call a news article that doesn't at least say Freedom Caucus and their DC overlords. And it is just straight propaganda. Now, in their defense, they did publish John Baer's op-ed. It's up on their opinion page right now. So, okay, good job on that one. They do have another columnist, Dave Simpson. I really like his writing. I think he's really funny. But the majority of their stuff, it's entirely on the left. And I just think that people are, I think the Wyoming citizens, I think everybody in general, it's not just Wyoming, is just tired of that. So next thing, I mentioned during the show that if you've never been to Cheyenne and had a chance to sit and watch the legislative session, we may have an idea of how we can help you make that happen. You want to tell my viewers about that?
Well, we have a lot of generous supporters here in Teton County that would like to open up opportunities for people around the state to head to Cheyenne. So what will happen is just send us an email and we'll pay all your expenses, put you up in a nice hotel. We'll even pay for you to go out to dinner with the legislator and get, talk to them about an issue that you might be writing on. We don't want you wheeling through McDonald's while you're there. We want you to go to a nice dinner and bring your kids if you're a stay-at-home mom or whatever. And we're not going to tell you what you have to say. You're going to just write about real news, what you saw in the session. So send us an email, and we've got a calendar. So I'll be down there a bunch. I know David will be down there the whole time. And we would just like people from around Wyoming. We'll cover all your expenses, and you just help share the news. So
Yeah. So if you want to, if you're in some far-flung place, you're up in Cody, for example, or you live up in Sheridan or wherever, and you want to go watch the legislative session for a day or two, we'll help you make that happen. Yes. And the only thing we ask is you just write us a little piece about what you saw.
Right.
And that's it. And there's a couple places on our website where you can, there's contact forms all over that thing. There's one on the reader forum. If you go under it's under Contact Us. There's an option underneath there. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's another contact form there. And the email will come right to us, and we'll get it set up. And then the other thing, too, that I think that I really want to see happen, if you've ever wanted to write a piece and you've maybe sent it to the newspaper and they've not published it because you're not, your last name is wrong, and you just think that, hey, man, you like to write and you haven't had stuff published, well, send it to us. I'm not saying we will publish it. I'm saying we probably will publish it. And, if you're a writer, I don't really care which side of the fence you're on, but if you got something to say, send it to us, and we'll try to get it published for you. So anyway, Rebecca, appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. I know you're a busy lady. Anything else we missed?
I just wanted to apologize to everybody that was behind me on my way to Lingle when my bumper was flying off.
You lost a bumper?
Yes, my bumper came halfway off. I kept hearing a knocking noise. Anyway, and this lovely man helped me patch it back together. But I'm getting my car ready to go. I'm getting myself ready to go. I'm so excited about going to Cheyenne and spending time with the legislators. I'm so excited about open range record, and I'm real excited about Wyoming's upcoming elections. I did make a big old round of checks this weekend for some really hardworking candidates from generous people in Teton County. If you vote correctly and you need help in the election, give me a call. I'll just be very straightforward about that.
There's one other thing that we forgot to mention. Perhaps not every night during the session, but most nights during the session, we're going to have a nightly news broadcast. I'm super excited about that, and we rented a place that's really close to the Capitol, so it'll be pretty easy to grab people and say, "Come on, you're going to be on the news tonight." And so I'm thinking like 4 nights a week, maybe we can pull off 5. We'll have a nightly news program. It'll be broadcast on the Open Range Record and the rest of our social media channels. So pretty excited about that too.
Thank you for everything you're doing, David. Thank you for my beautiful scarf and my lovely.
You're welcome.
And I will talk to everyone soon. Thank you.
All right, Rebecca, thank you for joining us on the program. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the show.
Let's please put some teeth in there.
Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. It already is at a rate that I really can't keep up with. The Cowboy State Politics Podcast. This program, Cowboy State Politics Live, the Open Range Record, which is a completely different media outlet that we just had my amazing business partner on the show with us. So anyway, go check out the Open Range Record website, openrangerecord.com. During the break, I got a note from a faithful listener to the program who said that Mr. Matt McGinnis, the guy who apparently is running for Congress now, is a member of the Sweetwater County GOP. And so, Matt, if you are, then maybe you should send me a note. You know, it might be good to get some media attention. Just saying, maybe. If you want to talk to Wyoming conservatives, well, this is the place to do it. Now, I've been warning you for quite a while not to underestimate the Democrats. It's what just went through my head is, Yoda, don't underestimate the dark side. I guess it wasn't. It was Obi-Wan Kenobi who said, don't underestimate the power of the dark side. Don't underestimate the Democrats because they are surging in Wyoming. And I'm not saying that, they're going to win a whole bunch of elections in Wyoming, but you have to take notice when they're able to assemble, close to 100 people on a street corner in the middle of January for some stupid protest. We think it's stupid. They don't. But they're able to put together the crowd, which tells you that they are making gains. And just because, and I saw a news piece or an article, we shouldn't call it a news piece. I think maybe it was on WyoFile. But basically it was, the Democrats are losing power in the state. Well, that's because most of them are in the Republican Party. The redcoats, my friends, in Wyoming, the Democrats are not stupid. Well, some of them are. But they know that the way to win an election in Wyoming is to join the Republican Party because most people are low information voters. We're working on changing that. But most people don't do their research into candidates and they just see Republican and check, or fill in the circles. I guess we don't have check marks. But you got to pay attention. You've got to know who you're voting for. So James Carville, who I know, I often play you some crazy stuff that guy says. But he is, on occasion, kind of, a crystal ball of what's going to happen in elections. He was the guy who came up with the phrase, hey, it's the economy, stupid. So he is saying that the next election is going to be a wipeout for the GOP in 2026. Here's what he says. And this is from Fox News. A veteran Democrat strategist, James Carville, predicted Saturday that the 2026 midterm elections will be a wipeout for Republicans, with Democrats picking up to what he thinks is 25 seats at a minimum. Frankly, it's going to be a wipeout, he told Kayleigh McEnany on Fox News Saturday. Your viewers need to know that the Democrats are going to pick up at a minimum of 25 seats, maybe as high as 45. In all likelihood, the Democrats will carry the Senate, he said. Carville was responding to an op-ed in the New York Times by David Plouffe, a former senior advisor to Barack Hussein Obama, in which Plouffe argued that Democrats had no credible path to sustained control of the Senate and the White House. After the adjustments to the Electoral College map, that that look likely to come with the next census. The Democratic presidential nominee could win all the states won by Kamala Harris, which wasn't that many, and plus the blue wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and still lose. An already unforgiving map becomes more so. Well, the conversation continued between McEnany and James Carville, and so I want to just play you a brief segment on that Fox News piece. Here it is.
Let's bring in Democratic strategist James Carville. You know, James, when asked on the debate stage, can a man become a woman or can a man get pregnant, is God bless the answer, or is there a better answer for Democrats?
I'm not worried about getting pregnant. I have no idea why this is the number one issue in America. We're swimming in $40 trillion in debt. We're getting ready to invade Greenland or Venezuela. But no, I don't think men can get pregnant. My experience over 81 years is I never worried about it. I never took a birth control pill in my life.
A Fox News alert, James Carville is not worried about getting pregnant. That is indeed a headline.
There you go.
James, I also wanted to ask you, there have been some Democrats, a really interesting conversation this week. Elizabeth Warren spoke to President Trump. You know, I know we have differing views on Trump, but Warren and him partnering together on credit card interest rates, and then Schumer's meeting with Trump, and Mamdani and Trump are texting. I just wonder, do you think there's room for Democrats to work with him, let's say on credit card interest rates?
I'm not going to declare it as not. If you remember, President Trump was very solicitous toward Mayor-elect Mamdani when he came to the White House. I know in certain instances, Governor Whitmer in Michigan has worked with President Trump to achieve some stuff in the Great Lakes. I mean, I don't know, and most people are kind of skeptical that caps on interest rates actually work very well anyway. I'm not a good enough economist to weigh in one way or the other. But maybe there's a possibility. I mean, Trump, he says he wants to lower credit card interest rates. That's easier said than done, but let's see where it goes, and maybe there's a possibility to work together.
Okay, so we'll follow that. David Plouffe, I wanted to read you some thoughts that he had this week. Of course, he worked with Obama, you worked with Bill Clinton. He said this, and it's Democrats will lose in 2028 unless they change course now. He said, right now, Democrats have no credible path to sustain control of the Senate and the White House. After the adjustments to the Electoral College map that look likely to come with the next census, the Democratic presidential nominee could win all the states won by Kamala Harris, plus the blue wall, and still fall short of 270 electoral votes. An already unforgiving map became more so. This is equally true of the Senate. Do you have as dim of a view as David Plouffe on the path of Democrats?
Well, David is a high-tech, big-brain guy who's looking into 2030, what happens in the 2030 census, and that's good. I'm looking at the 2026 elections, and frankly, it's going to be a wipeout. Your viewers need to know that the Democrats are going to pick up at a minimum 25 seats, maybe as high as 45. Wow. In all likelihood, the Democrats will carry the Senate. So, and I think we're shaping up very well for the 2028 election. But I don't know, 2030 is, I'm 81. That might be on the other side of my horizon, to be frank with you.
Yeah, so 25 to 45 seats, that's a bold prediction. And you are crushing my prediction on the 5, which was that Jessica Tarlov would have an unhappy night and Republicans would overperform, which I still believe. The trend lines are very good, James. When you look at inflation coming down, when you look at GDP, you think an economic revival that I think will come cannot demolish the trend you're seeing?
Well, I guess anything is possible. Why is Trump trying to call the election off? The first question every Republican candidate will have to answer, will you agree to have an election in November 2020?
All right. That's where he goes off the cliff. Now, sorry for the length of that video bite there, but I think it was funny, Carville talking about getting pregnant. Anyway, but at the end of it, he says, well, Trump's saying he's going to call off the election. That's horse crap. I mean, it is literal
horse crap.
But, I mean, that's not a thing. But, I mean, Carville sometimes is on the extreme left of things. But I think that we should pay attention to his prediction that maybe we're going to lose some seats in the House. And he says take over the Senate. I don't see that last part coming. But certainly, I mean, it is a possibility. Historically, the party in power loses seats in the midterm election. That almost always happens. And it's a pretty rare thing that if Republicans have the White House, that they retain control of Congress. It happened, like the switch happened during Trump's first term. It happened with Barack Obama. I mean, it almost always happens that the party in power loses seats in the midterm election. Now, I mean, if it turns out to be 25 or God help us 45 seats that Republicans lose, I think that would be a disaster, and I don't really see that's going to happen. But I think my main point here is don't underestimate the Democrats. Now in Wyoming, and I just want to give you the kind of the lay of the land here in the governor's race. You have Eric Barlow, who voted with the Democrats 85% of the time, or who votes with the Democrats 85% of the time. You've got Megan Degenfeller. I think for me, the question mark is still in the air whether she's a conservative or not. Listen to the interview that I did with her. She's got some work to do there to win my vote on it. Brent Bean, okay, he's the conservative in the race. If Bo Biteman jumps into the governor's race, I mean, he gave the Senate away to the Redcoats, so you can't count on him, nor do I think that he would be a good candidate. I personally don't think he's going to run for governor. And there's going to be more. And there's Joseph Kibler, too. We left him out. Sorry about that, Joseph. We'll have you on the program before too long. Now, he's running as an independent. Now, personally, I don't see that there's a path to victory for an independent in the race, but it is Wyoming, and crazier things have happened. I mean, we have elected a lot of Democrat governors. I think that time has passed, but, I mean, there's the history there to say that it is possible. And again, we have 10 months until the next election. And so in politics, a lot of things can happen in 10 months. I mean, that's just a certainty. So, and I think, don't forget what Rebecca pointed out, that you get enough candidates in there and it's anybody's game. And, one little thing that could happen in an election that moves the needle. And so, I mean, lots can happen. And, I guess my predictions are like at this 10 seconds, what I see right now is a really crowded field. And I really hope that the conservative wins. In fact, I mean, I'm not going to vote for a redcoat. But there's a lot of people. I mean, there are some people, I should say, that are vying for some of these races that are like verifiable redcoats, right? If Slithers were to run for Secretary of State, Slithers is a redcoat. She votes with the Democrats almost all the time. She's responsible for killing really good conservative pieces of legislation, and we don't know what she's going to do in this session. But there's a lot of big question marks that we still haven't answered. So it's going to be interesting for sure. Let's see here. What else do I have in the stack of stuff? We got about 15 minutes left in the program. Let's do this one. This one's kind of funny. Well, I mean, if you're Hunter Biden, it's not funny. Mother of Hunter Biden's daughter asks the court to arrest him for failing to uphold his child support deal. And I quote, this is from justthenews.com. The mother of Hunter Biden daughter, Navy Joan Roberts, is asking the court to arrest him for failing to uphold his part of their child support agreement. London Roberts, mother of the 7-year-old, urged an Arkansas judge on Tuesday to reopen the long-running child support case and arrest him until he complies with the agreement they settled in 2023. Biden has 5 children, including 3 daughters. Quote, the defendant only tends to act in this case when he has to do so. As such, this court should motivate the defendant and incarcerate him in the Independence County Detention Center as a civil penalty until he purges his contempt by complying with the court's orders. In the alternative, the court should sanction the defendant as it deems appropriate and just. She had initially reached an agreement with Biden in which he would hand over, quote, a specified number of paintings he had created his daughter had selected, according to the motion. Also, she dropped her demand that her daughter be allowed to take the Biden last name and agreed to cut down her monthly child support payment request from $20,000 monthly child support request. Listen to this, $20,000 to $5,000. $20,000 a month for child support. That seems a little bit hefty, but there again, also $5,000 does too. But when you're Hunter Biden and you've gone through millions upon millions of dollars, that might be appropriate. Roberts' motion said that her daughter has picked out no art and received some paintings, but they were the ones chosen by Mr. Biden and not Navy Joan Roberts. So, in other words, Hunter Biden is a dirtbag. He always has been a dirtbag, and it is a dirtbag that doesn't pay child support. It's a dirtbag that doesn't, abide by court orders. And this case was settled back in 2023, so there's no reason why he shouldn't be paying his child support. I mean, it's just, it's Hunter Biden. So, I mean, it's, what else can you say? Dirtbag. Now, here's one that I was going to cover last week, but I didn't. Everybody is up in arms about the Wyoming Business Council getting defunded. Now, you got to remember, and I've covered this a lot on the program, but this one is, pretty much front and center in every so-called news outlet. And, when you are, let's see if we get to the right soundbite here. When you're the guy that, is in front of a legislative committee, and instead of trying to be cordial and, make your case, what you end up doing is calling the people on the committee Neanderthals like this.
Josh, do you think that one of the problems of the committee is they don't understand the infrastructure problem that we have? And basically, the private sector doesn't have to put in the infrastructure because they can go to other states. And I think when listening to them today almost made me think of them as Neanderthals, because they're thinking that somebody's going to bring in this infrastructure and pay for this infrastructure and make it happen. And I think that's what we need to do, is provide the infrastructure so they have the opportunity to come in at the same cost here as they do in New York.
Bruce Pivot, who happens to be on my board of directors.
All right, see, there it is.
I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, he's doing a good job calling members of the Appropriations Committee Neanderthals. And everybody expects that he's going to get funded. And all you got to do is go watch those hearings. And it is absolutely incredible what Josh Durrell said in front of the committee. I mean, the guy's a socialist. I mean, probably a communist. When he says he's going to create, it's his job to create an economic system. Oh, my God. That the free market doesn't work, that the free market is working against us, that it doesn't exist. It's only, on and on and on with this guy. And now the governor is weighing in, and he says it's nuts to kill the Wyoming Business Council. And again, this is from the Cowboy, so of course they're all in favor of giving out your money to people who it's questionable whether or not they even have a business. The governor's policy director told members of the Joint Appropriations Committee on Thursday that their advancement of a proposal to kill the Wyoming Business Council was crazy and nuts. And let me just, hold on just a second, let me back up on that. Not questionable whether or not they have a business. It's questionable whether or not they need any money at all. Let me give you an example. The cosmetics company in Jackson, who has a thriving store online. Why is it that we need to give her $2 million? We don't. Anyway, continuing. A legislative committee on Thursday voted 9-3 to adopt a bill that seeks to remove the Wyoming Business Council from the state's law books and eliminate many of the programs it operates. That maneuver follows the Joint Appropriations Committee vote on Tuesday. So this was, a week ago. Let's see here. Proponents of the repeal. Let's see here. Representative Ken Pendergraft echoed that and parried a claim by Governor Mark Gordon's policy director that repealing the Business Council smells bad and won't look good for the public. Quote, I think how this looks to the public depends a lot upon the circles that we run in and our own sphere and influence, said Pendergraft. The longer we serve in a place like this, the more our sphere of influence tends to be altered. Let's see here. Here we go. Randall Luthi, former Speaker of the House who serves as the governor's policy director, used strong language when he approached the Joint Appropriations Committee on Thursday, which he prefaced by saying he respects the committee, the legislature, and the staffers who help them craft bills. Quote, frankly, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, and professionally speaking as much as I can, this is nuts. This is crazy. The bill is rushed. The agency is more than 2 decades old, on and on and on. Well, of course he thinks it's nuts, because right now the Wyoming Business Council functions as the funding arm for all of the governor's pals. It is crony capitalism at its finest. That you're picking winners and losers, and by the way, they absolutely admit that they pick winners and losers. So anyway, there's lots of stories that we need to follow. And again, all this defunding stuff, I think it's entirely appropriate. It all depends on what happens when that bill gets to the floor. My guess is, if you want a prediction, a lot of these things are going to fly through the House because we just have the votes. Where they're going to face an uphill battle, I think, is in the Senate, because Senate President Dennis Beitman, his real name's not Bo, it's Dennis. Dennis Beitman gave control of the, gave control of the Senate to the Redcoats. And so the likelihood that these funding things aren't going to fly through the Senate, I mean, it's pretty low. I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle. But there again, it's something that we've got to do, my friends. We spend way too much money, and we got to stop this crony capitalism. All right, my friends. Well, that pretty much burns up another busy broadcast program today. Make sure that you go back and listen to the podcast from yesterday if you want to learn about ecofeminism. I know it sounds crazy, but you got to listen to it. Don't forget about going to the Open Range Record website. We're super proud of it, and there's a lot of stories that we're posting, so you don't want to miss a minute of them. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.